The rain had been falling for 3 straight days, as if the heavens themselves mourned with him. From the glass walls of his Manhattan penthouse, Ethan Cole, billionaire entrepreneur, tech visionary, and the face of endless magazine covers, stood motionless, watching the gray city blur beneath the storm. To the world, he was indestructible. To his own heart, he was a broken man. It had been a year since his wife, Lydia, vanished. The plane carrying her humanitarian team to a remote African village had gone off radar over the Congo. After weeks of failed rescue missions and scattered wreckage found deep in the jungle, the authorities had declared everyone lost. Ethan had spent millions searching for her, funding drones, hiring private trackers, bribing officials, but in the end, even he had to accept the impossible. He buried an empty coffin. He stopped smiling. He stopped living. Tonight, the mansion was silent except for the storm and the rhythmic ticking of Lydia's antique clock, her favorite, the only sound that reminded him she'd ever been real. That was when his intercom buzzed. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled. "There's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent." "I'm not taking visitors," Ethan replied flatly. "I understand, sir, but she said it's about—" "Mrs. Cole." Ethan turned slowly, every muscle freezing. "What did you say?" She said, "Your wife." Within seconds, Ethan was downstairs. Standing in the marble foyer, dripping rain onto the floor, was a young black woman no older than 25. Her clothes were travel-worn, her expression steady but exhausted. She clutched a worn leather satchel against her chest like it carried the world. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharp with grief and disbelief. "My name's Naya Mbeki," she said softly, her African accent lilting but clear. "And I came a very long way to tell you something important." He folded his arms. "You have 30 seconds, she met his gaze. "Your wife is still alive." The words hit him like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, Ethan forgot to breathe. The room spun. The storm, the marble, the weight of a year's worth of pain collapsing inward. "What did you just say?" He whispered. "I was there," Nia said, voice trembling. "I worked with the villagers who found the crash. They buried most of the victims. But one woman survived." Ethan's heart hammered. "That's impossible." "The rescue teams, they looked in the wrong place." Nia stepped closer, her eyes glistening. "The plane split before impact. Half of it went deeper into the rainforest. She was pulled from the wreckage by locals who couldn't contact the outside world. She was badly injured, but she was alive when I left 3 months ago." Ethan gripped the edge of the staircase to steady himself. His logical mind screamed it couldn't be true. Too many months, too many reports, too much silence. And yet, something in the girl's eyes pierced him. It wasn't the gaze of a liar. It was the gaze of someone carrying a truth too heavy to bear alone. "Do you have proof?" he asked hoarsely. Nia nodded and opened her satchel. Inside was a torn photograph. Lydia, smiling weakly on a straw mat, her left arm bandaged, her wedding ring glinting faintly in the light. Ethan's chest tightened. He touched the photo with shaking fingers. The details were undeniable. That was Lydia, his Lydia. "I found her in a small village near Kisangani," Nia said. "The people there are kind but poor. They don't have phones or power. They saved her life, but she couldn't walk for months. She didn't remember everything. But she said your name every day." Ethan sank into a chair, breathless. Why didn't anyone tell me this?" "Because the world doesn't look for those it already decided were gone," Nia replied gently. "But she told me to find you. She made me promise." He looked up, eyes glistening. "Promise what?" "To bring you hope before she loses hers." Those words shattered him. For the first time in a year, Ethan Cole, the man who built empires, felt utterly small, fragile, and human. He rose to his feet. "Where is she now?" "In the Congo, near the river. But the village is in danger, disease, floods, armed men. That's why I came. I didn't have money for a plane, but I worked my way here, one job at a time. I had to tell you before it's too late." Ethan turned toward the window again. Lightning flashed, illuminating his reflection, a man who'd lost everything and now stood on the edge of faith. He took a long breath, then said quietly, "You understand what you're saying, right? If this is true, if Lydia's alive—"
"I'll find her," Nia nodded.
"I know you will. That's why she believed in you." Ethan pressed the photo to his chest, eyes closing against a wave of emotion he hadn't felt in months. Then he turned to his assistant. "Book my jet tonight and prepare an investigation team. I want coordinates, maps, translators, everything." "Yes, sir," the assistant stammered, startled by the fire returning to his employer's voice. Ethan looked back at Naya. "You're coming with me," she blinked. "Sir, you've seen her? You know where to go. I don't care what it takes. If she's alive, we're bringing her home." Nia hesitated, her face lit by a small, trembling smile. "Then I guess our journey begins." Outside, thunder rolled over Manhattan. For the first time since the crash, Ethan didn't feel broken. He felt purpose. As the jet engines roared to life hours later, Ethan looked out over the sleeping city, clutching Lydia's photo. Beside him, Nia sat quietly, hands folded, eyes filled with the quiet strength of someone who had already lost much, and yet still believed in miracles. He didn't know it yet, but this journey would uncover far more than a missing wife. It would reveal truths about love, redemption, and the unbreakable bond between strangers who choose to care. The jet sliced through clouds like a silver arrow, heading east into the dark. Ethan sat near the window, staring at the endless stretch of sky while the hum of the engines filled the silence. In his hands, the photograph trembled slightly, not because of the turbulence but because of the storm inside him. Across from him sat Nia, her gaze fixed on the horizon. She looked exhausted yet calm, her presence quiet but steady. There was something about her, an invisible strength that didn't come from power or wealth but from faith. After hours of silence, Ethan finally spoke. "You said you worked with Lydia. How did you meet her?" Nia turned slowly, a faint smile softening her face. "She came to my village 2 years ago. She was building wells and schools for the children. Everyone loved her, especially the girls. She taught us English, and she always said, 'Education is how you lift the sky for others.'" Ethan's throat tightened. That sounded like Lydia, her warmth, her fearless kindness. "She was always like that," he said softly. "Even before I made my first million, she was helping people. She said the purpose of wealth was to serve those who don't have it." Nia nodded. "She still believes that. Even when she couldn't walk, she was teaching women how to read. She used the sand as her chalkboard." Ethan stared at her, the ache in his chest shifting into awe. "And no one knew she was alive?" "No," Nia said. "The village is deep in the forest. There's no connection to the outside world. The government doesn't even know it exists." She paused. "When I left, Lydia was sick. There were infections spreading. I told her I would find help," she said. "She believed you'd come." Ethan leaned back, closing his eyes. "Then she still has more faith in me than I do in myself." When they landed in Kinshasa, the air hit them like a wave, dense, humid, filled with the scent of earth and rain. The sun glowed like a furnace through a haze of clouds. For Ethan, who had spent years in air-conditioned offices and luxury jets, the sudden rawness of it all felt surreal. They were met by a local fixer, an older man named Samuel, who Nia had contacted through a mission network. He was tall, calm, and deeply respectful of Nia. "You're brave to return," he told her. "Many wouldn't." Nia's eyes darkened. "Lydia saved me once. I owe her my life." The words caught Ethan's attention. "She saved you?" Nia nodded. "When rebels raided our camp, I was trapped in the fire. She went back for me. She burned her arm, but she pulled me out." Ethan looked away, emotion surging through him. Lydia, his wife, the woman he'd thought he'd lost, had risked her life for someone else's. He felt both pride and heartbreak twist inside him. They began their journey inland the next morning, by jeep, then by riverboat, then on foot through the forest. With each passing mile, Ethan's polished world peeled away. The roads turned to mud, the air thickened with insects and the scent of rain-soaked trees. Yet through it all, Nia guided them fearlessly. At night, they camped under the stars. Ethan lay awake listening to the jungle's heartbeat, the cries of animals, the rustle of wind through the trees. He thought of Lydia, of her laughter, her touch, her unwavering faith in people. He wondered what she would think of him now, a man who'd built skyscrapers but forgotten how to dream. One night, as they sat near the fire, Nia asked softly, "Do you ever wonder why she chose you?" Ethan looked up. "What do you mean?" "She told me once," Nia said, that you were a man who could build anything. But she worried that someday you'd forget that the most important things aren't built with hands. Ethan fell silent. The firelight flickered across his face. She was right, he whispered. After she disappeared, I buried myself in work. I told myself it was to honor her, but I was really just running. Nia smiled gently. You're not running now, he met her gaze. No, not anymore. Days later, after countless obstacles, broken bridges, flooded paths, and sleepless nights, they reached the edge of a clearing. Samuel stopped and pointed ahead. That's it, he said. Through the mist, Ethan saw a small village nestled beside a winding river. Mud huts, smoke rising from fires, children playing barefoot in the rain. But his eyes weren't searching for the scenery. They were searching for her. As they entered, villagers gathered, cautious but curious. Nia spoke quickly in Lingala, explaining who they were. When they heard Lydia's name, murmurs spread like ripples through water. Then an elderly woman stepped forward. Her hands were wrinkled, her eyes bright with recognition. You are the husband, she said in broken English. She speak your name every day. Ethan's heart pounded. Where is she? The woman pointed toward a hut near the riverbank. There. He turned, and for a moment, the world seemed to fade. The trees, the voices, even the air. There she was, sitting beneath the shade of a mango tree. Her body frail, but her spirit unmistakable. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner, yet her eyes, those gentle, unshakable eyes, were the same. She was teaching a group of children, tracing letters in the dirt with a stick. Ethan's knees almost gave out. He took one step, then another. The children looked up and scattered, whispering excitedly. Lydia turned, confused at the sudden commotion, and when her eyes met his, she froze. For a second, she didn't believe what she saw. Then her hand rose to her mouth. Ethan? He broke into a run. Lydia! When he reached her, he fell to his knees beside her, tears streaming down his face. He took her hands, thin, trembling, real, and pressed them to his lips. I thought I lost you, he whispered. She touched his face, tears spilling freely. I knew you'd come. For the first time in a year, the world made sense again. Nia stood a few feet away, watching silently. The sight of their reunion brought her to tears. She'd walked for months across continents for this moment, and it was worth every mile. That night, the village celebrated. Fires burned, drums echoed, and laughter returned to a place that had seen too much loss. Lydia sat beside Ethan, her head on his shoulder as she told him her story. The crash, the rescue, the months of struggle, and how Nia had promised to find him. She was my angel, Lydia said softly. I wouldn't be here without her. Ethan looked across the fire at Nia, who smiled shyly. No, he said. We wouldn't be here without her. He rose to his feet, lifting his glass of water toward her. To Nia, the bravest soul I've ever met, the villagers cheered. Nia's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. But even in that joy, something darker lingered in the edges of the night. The faint sound of distant engines and voices echoing from beyond the trees. Trouble was coming, and Ethan was about to learn that love's greatest test wasn't finding someone, it was protecting them once they found the night sky over. The Congo was thick and alive, stars hidden by clouds, the air humming with crickets and distant thunder. Ethan sat beside Lydia's bed, watching her sleep. Her face was peaceful, her breathing shallow but steady. It still felt unreal, that after all the grief, all the searching, he was sitting here beside the woman he loved. But peace rarely lasts in places where hope is fragile. Outside, Nia stood near the fire with Samuel. Their voices were hushed, urgent. I heard engines near the ridge, Samuel said. Trucks, maybe armed men. Nia's eyes widened. Rebels? He nodded grimly. They've been raiding villages, taking supplies. They won't spare this one. Ethan overheard them and stepped outside. What's happening? Nia turned, her expression tense. There may be danger coming. We need to move her now. Ethan's pulse quickened. She's too weak to travel. Then we carry her, Nia said firmly. She saved us once. It's our turn now. There was no hesitation in her voice, only conviction. Ethan realized she wasn't afraid for herself, only for Lydia. Within minutes, the villagers began packing what little they could carry. Mothers clutched children. Men filled jugs with water. The sound of engines grew louder, closer. Lydia stirred weakly as Ethan lifted her. "What's happening?" "Nothing you need to worry about," he said gently, brushing her hair back. "We're getting you to safety." Her hand gripped his arm. "Ethan, be careful. I promise," he whispered. They moved through the forest in silence, guided only by moonlight. Nia led the way, her movements swift and sure. She carried a lantern, shielding its glow with her hand. Behind them, Samuel and 2 villagers carried supplies. The deeper they went, the louder the fear in Ethan's chest became. Not of death, but of losing her again. Then gunfire, sharp, distant, but closing in. "Run," Samuel hissed. Branches whipped against their faces as they fled through the trees. Ethan's arms ached from carrying Lydia, but he refused to slow. Nia stayed just ahead, clearing the path, shouting warnings. Finally, they reached an old mission outpost, abandoned but sturdy. They barricaded the door and fell into tense silence. Ethan laid Lydia down, heart pounding. "We can't stay here long," he said. Nia nodded. "We need to reach the river by dawn. Once there, we can call for help. But the signal's weak. We'll have to climb the ridge to connect." Ethan looked toward the trees. "Then I'll go," Nia shook her head. "No, I know the way. You stay with her." He hesitated. "It's dangerous," she smiled faintly. "You think I came all this way to stop now?" Before he could argue, she grabbed her satchel and slipped into the darkness. The minutes dragged like hours. Lydia's hand found his. "She's brave," she whispered. "She's incredible," he replied softly. Lydia smiled weakly. "You know what I thought about all those nights in the jungle? Not the life we had, the people we could have helped more. I told myself if I ever got another chance, I'd use it differently." Ethan's eyes burned. "We'll do it together," he said. "When we get home." Outside, thunder rolled. He stared at the door, praying for Nia's return. Then, another sound, footsteps, quick, urgent. The door burst open. Nia stumbled in, breathing hard. "Signal sent," she gasped. "Help is coming." Ethan's relief was short-lived. Behind her came a shout in a language he didn't understand. Men with rifles appeared in the clearing, flashlights cutting through the dark. Samuel shouted something back, trying to reason with them. One of the men struck him with a rifle butt. Nia darted forward, shielding him. "Stop!" Ethan yelled, stepping out with his hands raised. "We don't want trouble." One of the rebels barked a command. A gun lifted, pointed at Ethan. Lydia cried out, "No!" In that split second, Nia moved. She shoved Ethan aside as the gun went off. The sound ripped through the night. Ethan fell to the ground, unhurt. But when he turned, his heart stopped. Nia stood there, her eyes wide in shock. Her hand pressed to her side. Blood seeped through her shirt. The rebels froze as the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air. The rescue team had arrived faster than anyone expected. Lights flooded the clearing. The rebels fled into the forest, swallowed by the dark. Ethan rushed to Nia's side. "No, no, no. Stay with me," he begged, pressing his hands against the wound. She looked up at him, her voice faint but peaceful. "She's safe now. That's all that matters." Lydia crawled beside her, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us both," Nia smiled weakly. "You saved me first," her breathing slowed. Ethan held her hand tight. "You're not going anywhere," he said, his voice breaking. "You hear me? You're going to see the world you helped save." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Then make sure it's a kind one." And with that, her hand went still. The rescue team airlifted them out at dawn. Lydia survived, weak but alive. Samuel too would recover. But Nia's body was buried beneath the same tree where she had first met Lydia. The tree she had called the place of second chances. At her funeral, the villagers sang softly, their voices rising like prayer. Ethan stood beside Lydia, silent tears streaking his face. He had lost a hero, but gained a truth no amount of wealth could buy. Back in New York weeks later, he founded a new initiative, the Nia Foundation, dedicated to rebuilding the village and providing education for women across Africa. In its center stood a plaque with her words, "Mercy is the only language every heart understands." Every year afterward, Ethan and Lydia returned to the Congo. They built schools, hospitals, and water wells, the very dreams Lydia had once drawn in the sand. And every time they visited, they placed fresh flowers beneath that mango tree. One evening, as the sun set over the river, Lydia took Ethan's hand and whispered, "Do you ever wonder why she risked everything for us? Ethan smiled softly, because she believed that saving one life can change the world. They stood there quietly, watching the sky turn gold, the river shimmering with light. The world still had its darkness, but in that moment, it also had hope. And somewhere, carried on the wind, it felt like Nia's voice was still there, whispering the truth she had lived by until her final breath. Kindness never dies, it only multiplies.